Welcome to Coffee with CNG. This is the Law Unplugged. I'm Sharona Naika. I have Ravona with me today and Pravashni, who's going to sit on the panel. Today's topic is centered around sectional title. So let's start with the first question. What exactly is a sectional title scheme in South Africa, and how does it differ from freestanding properties?
Okay, so a sectional title scheme is a particular plot within a particular piece of land where it is demarcated specifically for the owner. The owner will have rights, exclusive rights to that particular property and to adjacent properties that fall within that particular property. Whereas a freehold house, there is no restrictions. It's subject clearly to rates on its own. And there aren't as many rules and regulations in dealing with a freehold as opposed to buying into a sectional title scheme.
So basically, a sectional title will be a body corporate, and a freestanding house would be just a house on a plot of land. And that's really the differentiation between a sectional title and a freestanding.
Okay. So I think the next question would then lead into what would be the legal obligations that stem from buying into a sectional title. You speak of a lot of rules, body corporate. How does that impact an owner buying into a sectional title?
So in a sectional title scheme, I think one of the first things that an owner has to be aware of is the fact that you are obligated to pay levies. That's mandated by legislation. We refer specifically to the Sectional Titles Management Schemes Act. Basically, your levies cover your day-to-day expenses in terms of running the sectional title scheme. Your gardening, your maintenance, that type of thing. Levies are you're obligated to pay levies. You cannot opt out of not paying levies because as I said, it is a statutory obligation in terms of paying levies. It's over and above your utility charges. It's over and above rates. And basically, the body corporate itself derives its income solely from all unit owners within the sectional title scheme paying their levies. And obviously, if you don't pay levies, it actually financially prejudices the body corporate in terms of carrying out its function as the body corporate in a sectional title scheme.
Yeah. So basically, a body corporate is like a machine, and it needs money to function. But without it, it won't function. So hence why every owner in a body corporate needs to pay a specific amount of money so that the machine can run. That's basically what a levy is, in essence. Whereas in a freestanding home, you just pay your rate, electricity, or water, and that's not governed by anybody else.
Sure.
What is your...
Okay, so Pravashni, when does an owner then become liable to pay levies?
So the owner becomes liable to pay levies the moment you buy into a sectional title, i.e. a body corporate. That is when the owner becomes liable.
Okay, so that would be on registration of property. And then I think it begs the question of how is levies, or how is the levy amount derived? You know, how is each owner given a figure every month to pay? Where does the body corporate derive that figure from?
So it honestly depends on the body corporate. So on the body corporate basis, some body corporates determines it on the PQ, like on the surface or how large your unit is. Some body corporates are like, okay, this is the body levy that's going to be for every single unit. It really depends on the body corporate and how that levy is derived, what is in that levy. Like you get certain types of levies. You get your CSOS levy, you get a garden levy, you get a garage levy, and that is different types of levies that you get.
Okay. So I think you've covered my next question, which is what is the different types of levies?
Yeah.
So I think a question that arises often, or that I get asked, is when an owner is looking into buying into a body corporate, how do they know, or into a sectional title rather, how do they know that they're making a healthy financial decision in terms of buying into a particular scheme? What sort of assessment does a potential owner have to make before buying into a scheme?
So once you buy into a sectional title, you have to know what you're buying into. Your transferring attorneys will tell you this is the levies that is associated with this property. These are the conduct rules to show that these are the levies that you may possibly have to pay. So I think it's very important that transferring process before you buy into a sectional title to know what you buy into. Right.
Sure.
It's the conveyancing process before that makes you aware of what you're buying into.
Yeah. And with a lot of our newer body corporates, obviously you can ask to have a look and familiarize yourself with the management rules, the conduct rules, have a look at and assess the finances of the body corporate before buying into a body corporate.
You know, and a lot of owners sometimes say, I didn't know I had this levy. I didn't know this levy was applicable. But once you buy, you are given the conduct rules, you're given your levy statement, you're well aware of what levy you are paying and how much that levy is. So there's no excuses. I didn't know that this is the levy that is owed or that I owe this levy.
But it comes back to the point that legislation obligates you to pay those levies. You can't opt out of it.
Yes, it is mandatory.
Sure. So I think, especially in today's society and economic climates, what are some of the red flags that a potential buyer would have to look at after assessing finances, conduct rules, management rules of a body corporate?
I think one of the biggest red flags, and it's currently what we're dealing with one of our buildings, is the way in which the body corporate is run. For example, if you are paying your certain levies each month, but you're not getting the services that are supposed to be derived by the body corporate, then that immediately is a big red flag. For example, the care and maintenance of an elevator in a building. If it's been out of function for more than a year, it means that your levies are not being utilized in the correct manner. I think that's an immediate red flag in terms of how the body corporate runs itself.
Yeah, it's the management. I think when you're looking into buying, looking how that body corporate is being managed. If it's mismanaged, and it's not wise to buy into a body corporate that's mismanaged. Because the levies are ever changing, and that changes via the trustees who manage that body corporate. So it's so important to look at how that body corporate is managed.
Yeah. Whether they have a registered managing agent, a proper budget.
Yeah. Looking into the previous financials of that body corporate to determine whether it's feasible to actually buy into it.
Also, the trustees themselves, are they in good standing? Do they have any judgments or anything against them? Can they actually occupy that role as trustees? Because remember, they have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the body corporate.
So I think let's address the glaring question of what is the difference between a sectional title, owning a property within a sectional title scheme, and a freestanding property.
Okay, so basically, for example, if a developer wants to develop a plot of land, what is called an ERF, they will go ahead and open a sectional title register at the respective deeds office in order for that particular plot to be further subdivided. So it's going to be divided into your actual units that an owner is going to purchase, your exclusive use areas, and your common areas. As the unit owner, you have an undivided share in the common property of that particular sectional title scheme. So when we talk about the unit, we're talking about the actual plot itself, which you are actually buying into. And every unit owner will obviously own the unit itself. There may be an exclusive use area. An exclusive use area, for example, is your garage, your garden that will form part of the unit itself. And that again is for the unit owner's maintenance and for responsibility in terms of that particular unit and exclusive use area. Your common property is basically what all of your unit owners in the sectional title scheme have access to. So it's your pathways, it's your communal gardens, that type of thing. With a freestanding home, it's completely at the owner's discretion. As I said, there's no rules. It's freestanding, subject to rates and utilities. The owner is completely responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of that particular plot.
So let's get into the rules. We understand now what a sectional title is. We understand what makes up the scheme and the members of the scheme. But these schemes are governed by rules, and we have two types of rules. So I think let's go a bit into what those types of rules are and what the framework for those rules.
Okay, so your two different types of rules are obviously your management rules and your conduct rules. Your management rules basically governs how the actual sectional title administration is going to be governed. So what sectional title schemes generally tend to do is they'll appoint a managing agent in terms of how the day-to-day admin is run in terms of the body corporate. For example, your billing to your unit owners, the amounts that need to appear on the account, that type of thing. Your conduct rules governs how your unit owners in the sectional title scheme govern themselves, meaning the behavior among the respective unit owners in the sectional title scheme. So, for example, if your conduct rules mandates that you're not allowed to wash your car in the common property, you're supposed to be washing it in your exclusive use area, which is obviously your driveway or your garage. That would be conduct rules in respect of owners in the scheme. If you obviously violate those conduct rules, you may be subject to a fine, but each body corporate has a different set of conduct rules in terms of this scheme. So they obviously tailor it to suit what works best for that particular scheme.
So we have a governance framework on one hand and a framework that then sets out harmonious living within the section. I think with delving a bit deeper into the conduct rules, we know that in real time, owners buy into a scheme understanding that they have to comply with conduct rules, but on a day-to-day basis, this is not adhered to. And it forms the basis of a lot of legal framework for us to deal with. And it brings me to my next discussion of fines. So if there's a breach of the conduct rules, are fines enforceable? And if they are enforceable, how do you enforce a fine against an owner who's breached a conduct rule?
So the conduct rules generally sets out the framework for fines and how fines should be instituted and what would constitute a fine. Fines can vary from 500 to 1,000, and like you said, washing your car in somebody else's driveway instead of your exclusive use area. Fines are also determined or dealt with in a way where you either give a warning, and if a warning isn't adhered to, then you get a monetary fine actually on your levy statement. So that's really how fines work.
So I think what would arise from that, and what's interesting to understand, is if you've bought a sectional title for the purposes of an investment and you've now rented out the property and your tenant has transgressed one of the conduct rules, what remedy does a body corporate have against implementing a fine?
So if the tenant transgresses against the conduct rules, which they're well aware of, a fine will be issued against the owner's levy statement, onto the levy statement.
Okay. And so the owner becomes liable on behalf of its breaching tenant.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Pravashni brings up a good point, and I think that this is something that we need to reiterate when you are actually purchasing into a sectional title scheme. You as the owner may purchase a unit in the sectional title scheme for the purposes of investment. But you also need to be made aware that the relationship between you and the tenant versus you and the body corporate are two totally separate relationships. A tenant is not responsible for the levy payment. The legislation is very clear. It is the unit owner that bears the responsibility for the payment of levies. And I think that in sectional title schemes in particular, we always get this issue where we call up owners that are in arrears and they say that my tenant hasn't been paying their rent, so I can't afford to pay the arrears. And I think that that's something that we need to reiterate, that when you do place a tenant in a unit, it's not the tenant's responsibility to pay for the levies. It's you as the unit owner.
Yeah, no, sure. I don't think that is a valid defense. Well, there's no defense for the non-payment of levies, but certainly not this, in that a landlord and tenant relationship is very different from the legal obligation created when an owner purchases in a scheme, and the owner of the section is liable irrespective of whether their tenant pays the rent or not. It's not subject to, basically. So let's get into a bit of practical advice. If we have a listener who's seriously considering buying into a sectional title and into a scheme, what would you say or summarize as the 3 key components that a prospective purchaser needs to look into?
Okay, I think first and foremost is your financials. You need to look into whether the body corporate itself has a 10-year maintenance plan in respect of the scheme, and also what is the reserve fund looking like. I think that's a very good indication of whether you're going to be buying into a healthy sectional title scheme or not.
Sure. And then just to add on the financials, I think it's important to understand whether there has been special levies or impending special levies to be added on.
And just to also quickly touch on that point, there's a very big difference between ordinary levy and your special levy as well. Special levies in particular are raised as and when it is necessary. Again, that's mandated by legislation. And it's basically where the body corporate itself finds itself in a situation where they actually need to raise emergency funds in order to address a particular problem that's arisen within the body corporate. So that's another thing to, obviously, I think first and foremost is finances.
Correct.
Inspection of the property, which is so important. Exclusive use area, actually the actual property itself, but you have to ensure that the body corporate has the necessary insurance available. Public liability and private, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and the third one being the conduct rules and the management rule, because it's so important to see how the body corporate is run and how it is managed.
Sure. And if there are sufficient rules to actually keep it in a law-abiding scheme. Correct.
You always want to buy into a healthy environment.
Sure. This is Law Unplugged with CNG. Thank you for listening, and a great thank you to Ravona and Pravashni for giving us some insight on sectional title. Please feel free to join us at our next podcast. And if you have any questions that come up, please do give us a shout. You're welcome to call our offices. Alternatively, pop us an email on info@cngattorneys.co.za.